everyone. Welcome back to Articulating with David Barnett. My name is Sharon Loker, and of course, the man himself, David Barnett.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And the photographer himself.
That's right. With
How
us
do you do?
today.
How do you do?
Tom Ferderbar.
Yes, joining us today is Tom Ferderbar, a photographer who some of his work you can see behind us here. So we will be talking to him about quite a few different things. Anyways, to get us started, I thought we would jump right in there. I did a little research. I saw a video that you and your daughter had put out for the gallery a couple years ago.
Okay.
And in it, you mentioned that you received your first camera when you were 12 years old.
That's correct.
So, what was it about photography that you were so enamored with that made you just jump into it full force?
I like the idea of creating something myself. You know, it was something that it's like starting with a blank sheet of paper and putting something on it, you know, and with a camera you start out with no subject and finding a subject and taking the picture. Not only that, developing the film, making the prints yourself.
Sure.
So it was my own interpretation of things, you know.
Absolutely.
Of course, I didn't look at it as a career when I started. I just fell in love with photography. I had the camera about 3 months before I really decided that photography was going to be my career, though. So I was like 12 years and 3 months old, and I knew what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Do you remember what type of camera it actually was?
It was a Kodak Box Brownie. Was the actual name of it?
Yeah.
A very famous camera.
It is.
And took a picture, pretty large, really, 2.5 inches by about 4 inches. You know, something about like that. Pretty good size.
Okay.
So, but of course, it only had one f-stop. In other words, it only was set to shoot out in daylight, and that was it. You know, but
Point and shoot.
I shot snowstorms, you know, cats out in the backyard, and I won an award at the big deal. But it was, for me, it was a big deal. And I was probably 14 years old. Took a picture of I used to work on my uncle's farm in the summer during World War II. And there was this horse that I really liked called Prince. And he was standing out in the pasture with trees around him. And I ran out there with my box camera and I took a picture of him. And I submitted it to the Milwaukee Sentinel, who had a Picture of the Week award, you know. And I was so proud I received an award at age 13 or 14, you know, for that picture of that horse.
That's great.
Just a really corny picture, but...
Yeah, but still, that was the beginning of your love affair.
Yeah,
and it's obviously something that not only became your livelihood, but just your passion overall. And has continued to be your entire life. So
yes, and to this day, you know, as I say, I'm almost 96 now, and I still can't get away from it. I love it, you know. I'm always thinking about what to shoot.
Yeah, there's always something new out there.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
That's incredible to me. Just, I think anyone that has that desire, that love for something, that you just are willing to put everything into it, and I imagine just your body of work in that time is got to be incredible.
It's very enjoyable. To this day, I'll say to myself, what can I shoot? I don't know. I don't know what I should shoot. But the odd thing is, if you stuck me in a room, just get in here and just start shooting, you would, you know, I think any photographer, suddenly you would find there's a half dozen, 10 things you could photograph in that room. And I don't just mean, a coffee cup. I just mean a nice design of the corner of a picture or versus a light on the wall or something. So it's just, it's up here, you know.
Oh, definitely. I agree. And I imagine as being in that room, so to speak, you can continue to find something new as the light is changing, as the day moves on. Things are just going to evolve, so to speak, over time.
Yeah.
So.
I've got some nice. My daughter and son live in an apartment in Milwaukee, and I was sitting there one day waiting for them for an hour or so while they were doing something, and I wound up with about 8 pictures in the apartment that I really liked. They were really kind of fun to shoot.
When was the first trip that you made to shoot the Route 66?
I was 18 years old. I had an uncle who lived in California, was here visiting, and he took myself and my mother and his wife back to California. And he was pulling a 33-foot house trailer. And so we slept in that trailer every night. And he took 3 weeks to go to California. And so I was at age 18 is when I did my first. We went along Route 66 because that's the route you would take in those days.
Sure.
And so that was my first trip, and of course.
So what year was that?
1947. 1947.
So I was 1 year old then.
Child.
I was well beyond a glimmer in my parents' eye. I didn't come around till 72, but so that really began your love affair with Route 66 then. That's something you've gone back to.
Yes,
over the years.
of course, when I shot it in 1947, I wasn't doing it because, this is a historic highway, because it wasn't a historic highway. Back at that time, it was just the route from Chicago to L.A.,
Mm-hmm.
And, however, by 1980, it had become kind of a historic highway because it had pretty much been shut down because of expressways and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You could still drive the road, but it was no longer called Route 66.
Right.
But the roads, the highway, the pavement is 85% of that original pavement is still there to this day. At any rate, in 1980, I had a commercial photography studio. We did advertising photography. I had an assignment for GE Medical Systems in Texas, and I decided to leave 10 days early and drive along what was now old 66 back in 1980. Just to see what it was like, and it was kind of startling to me to see everything was deserted. I mean, all the houses rotting. I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of it, weathered and so on. But I did some serious shooting then with a more professional camera, of course. So that's when I started, and but of course I still had a studio to run, so I couldn't go out as often as I wanted. Then when I retired in 1997 is when I started really shooting a lot more. I've probably been up and down 66, might be a couple dozen times by now,
That's amazing.
But there's always something to find on it, no matter how many times you take that route, because what's happening is buildings that let's say you went out there in the year 2010. And you saw a certain building that you liked, but it was still pretty new. Well, by 2024, 2025, that might have been empty for 5 years, and now it's getting deserted, and the shutters are falling off and all, So there's always something developing if you want to shoot old buildings and that sort of thing.
Sure. I imagine there's a lot to see on that, especially, starting from where you were talking about when you were 18 and everything was brand new, and then over the years to watch all these brand new buildings and roadside attractions just begin to dwindle. And
there's very few roadside attractions anymore.
Yeah.
Because everything is expressway now.
Right.
I feel kind of sadly for people who just, if they're just going to take a drive out west for the sake of driving and stay on the expressway, they don't get to see America. They just get to see 3 lanes of pavement.
Yeah, you're not really getting that kind of romantic journey that...
Right. Of course, by the same token, when you decide to take the 2-lane roads, on the expressway, you could drive 800 miles in a day if you really wanted to, make time.
Sure.
But when you're shooting route, or when you're just driving along Route 66, you'll be lucky to get 200 or 300 because you want to see things. You stop and look at things. You know, you might even stop and go into a store to see what it's like and so on.
Yeah. Tell us about the photos that you have here. That you did on Route 66. There's the sign Route 66. Where was that taken?
Okay, I shot that in the year 2000. Funny how I can remember that, but I shot that in the year 2000. And that building had been an antique shop for Route 66.
Yes.
But it was closed now, you know, and the sign was still hanging there. And I got a couple of shots from outside of the building too, but it was in Phelps, Missouri, I believe.
You are correct. It was Phelps, Missouri.
Phelps, Missouri.
I wrote down some notes on everything before we got started. That's incredible.
Yeah. The sign on the right there. I think that's in Tucumcari, New Mexico. Okay. The restaurant is gone now, but I just love the sign. The looks of the sign.
It is great. I love that old signage.
Yeah, I've got a lot of pictures of signs from hotels and restaurants and so on. You know, and motels.
Yeah. I love all these little pieces of American history.
Yeah, they're really neat, aren't they?
There's really something special about them. Whether they're brand
new. In fact, I was out there a few years ago. I happened to pass that sign. It's still there, but it's really falling apart.
Yeah.
This one?
This was a shot that drove me crazy. It's on the border of Texas and Oklahoma, if I remember correctly. I can't remember the name of the town.
Yeah. Shamrock,
Texas. That's the name of the town.
It's a Conoco gas station, Shamrock, Texas.
Yeah, I had to shoot that picture from the middle of a street, and that was at an intersection. It was a pretty busy intersection, and I shoot everything with my camera on a tripod. And I'd get out to the middle of the street in the traffic, get off of the street, go back in the street, get off the street, go back on the street. Yeah.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I've noticed with your work, your subject matter always tends to steer towards the outdoors, whether it be buildings, nature.
Yeah.
What is it about that subject matter that?
I don't know. I don't shoot people very often. Mm-hmm. You know,
that's a good thing. Otherwise, you'd be in jail.
Yeah, I know you could go to jail. You're right. I never thought about that. But I don't. I'm not drawn towards shooting people or photographing them. You know, it's just not my interest. But I like landscapes and stuff outdoors. Maybe that came from. I really love Ansel Adams, a photographer. Love his work, and of course he really inspired me professionally, you know, to that kind of subject matter. So
why don't you tell us about your relationship with Ansel Adams and your experience?
To ask about
Sorry,
that.
I didn't mean to.
No, that's fine.
Let me think now. In 1958, I got an invitation, which I'm sure went to a million people. But anyways, I received an invitation to attend his second seminar, where he would pick 20 photographers, and you'd spend 10 days with him. And this was out at Yosemite. Mm-hmm. And so I was lucky enough to be one of the 20. And it was very expensive, though. For the 10 days, it cost $100. That's what he charged, if you can believe that. And I'm thinking the guy worked for 10 days and he made $2,000. But that was really nice of him, wasn't it, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Anyways, and every evening he would have 2 of the 20, because there were 10 days, he'd have 2 of the 20 of us have dinner. His wife would make dinner. And we ate dinner at his home in Yosemite.
Oh, how wonderful.
And that was pretty inspiring. I used this darkroom because I had studied all his work, you know, and I developed my film just like he did, and I got that down there, and he said, well, you can use my darkroom. So I was able to process my film while I was there.
Oh, that's too cool.
So that was in Ansel Adams' very dark room. So that was kind of a thrill. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not only to meet somebody you looked up to so much, but to be able, to have a meal in his home, to use his dark room.
Yeah, I sent him a half dozen prints about 6 or 8 months later. That might be one of them.
I believe that is one of them.
Anyways, I mailed to him, and with a little letter thanking him for the course and so on, and how much I enjoyed it. And I never received a reply. No, that was in 1958. Someone told me about 6 or 7 years ago. Those 6 pictures are in his collection. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he donated his life's work as well as work of other photographers that he liked to the Center for Creative Photography, which he developed at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And he said, your work is in their collection. So one day my wife and I were driving out to California, so I called ahead, and they said, yeah, sure, you can see your work. So it was kind of neat. They had them in a nice black box, and they made me put white gloves on to look at my own pictures. I just thought that was kind of funny. These are my shots.
But just what a wonderful achievement right there.
Yeah. So it made me pretty proud. He thought enough of my work to want to put it in his collection.
Absolutely.
So I was happy about that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Moving on. What I want to know, and what we always love to ask any of the artists we interview here, is how the two of you met. How did you and David meet?
We met in a bar. No, we didn't. No, I had some of my work exhibited at a show in at a gallery in my hometown of Delafield, Wisconsin, which I believe David had sponsored that gallery, if I'm not mistaken. And
the Delafield Arts Center.
Pardon? Delafield Arts Center.
Yeah, a nonprofit arts center, which had literally dozens and dozens of volunteers trying to make it work. And so at one point they asked me to take it over and operate it as a nonprofit. So I was running back and forth from Heartland to Delafield to downtown Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
And Tom came in with his photographs, and I thought, wow, these are great. So we put on a show for him at the Delafield Arts Center. That was when we got started working together.
Yeah.
It was over 20 years ago.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, the timeline of all that.
Yes, yeah. So that's how we met. Because I'd been to your gallery, but I didn't know you, prior to that. So and that was quite an honor to be in his gallery,
Oh, of
the
course.
biggest one in the state.
It
was an honor to show your work.
No.
Biggest and oldest gallery in the state, and yeah.
So the camera that you used in 1958, was it similar to the camera that Ansel Adams used, or what?
Very similar, yeah. I used an 8x10 view camera. It's you've seen pictures of old-time photographers with the camera on a tripod. It's got a bellows like an accordion has, and so on.
A black cloth.
And the black cloth, because you're shooting outdoors and you're looking at what's called the ground glass, the same size as the picture's going to be. Yeah. So you have to cover everything so that you can see the image on the ground glass. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was probably state of the art in those days for quality. If you could stand carrying all that equipment, and it was heavy and all that,
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine what was involved having to tote all of that around.
I can remember in Yosemite going crazy. I didn't have there weren't backpacks or anything. You had a case with a handle on it. You had to hold all of that stuff, and it probably weighed 40 or 50 pounds. And then the tripod was made of steel. Can you believe that? They made tripods out of steel. And a tripod for an 8x10 camera was a big chunk of steel.
Yeah.
So
you're getting
I remember trying to shoot one picture out at Yosemite with another guy, and I decided to go and shoot Vernal Falls. It was a 2.5-hour hike. I had to carry that backpack over that case. I finally threw it over my back and the tripod under my arms. And there was no route. I mean, there was no trail. And you could kind of tell where you're supposed to go. But 2.5 hours of climbing to get to it. And then we couldn't photograph it. The wind was blowing in such a direction that the mist was just covered the camera instantly. So then we had to lug it all the way back. And I spent about 3 hours in a bathtub when I got back. I was only 28 years old, but boy, I was so tired that evening.
Yeah. So with the photograph behind you there, Tom.
Yes, sir.
Where were you standing? Because it looks like you're almost maybe in a helicopter or something.
Well, I could say it's a helicopter, but if you'd like to know the truth, I'm in a parking lot.
Really? I would have never guessed that.
Yeah.
I always figured always emerged in, the midst of nature. And
it is at the a very popular place for people to photograph. If you've seen pictures that Ansel Adams has taken of the whole valley, where this is El Capitan, that's on the left side of the valley, and then on the right side of the valley is Bridal Veil Falls.
Yes.
And you drive through a tunnel coming from the south, I think. I don't know how long the tunnel is now, a quarter mile or whatever, through a mountain. And all of a sudden you break free. Oh my God, there's the valley. It's just beautiful, outstanding. And there's this huge parking lot. Well, I went back there. I took another guy and I went out there. Well, actually, this is not from the parking lot because we parked there. Everybody shoots from the parking lot, but of course we had to climb 200 feet higher. We'd lug our stuff up the mountain to get the shot, but it was pretty much the same kind of shot. Anyways, in 45 minutes I got 2 really nice shots, the shot of the valley and this one. And so I went back there with my wife and daughter in 2008, 50 years later. Because I had heard stories that Yosemite, because of pollution, you couldn't see the valley anymore and all that, So I just wanted to make a comparison to myself.
Sure.
And of course that wasn't true. It was just as clear as, believe it or not, as it was in 1958. Well, but anyways, the point was, I thought, well, I'm going to shoot the valley shot, because I've got a shot of the valley. You probably have a print of it here somewhere. And I wanted to shoot that again because it's a pretty popular picture. And I just wanted to see what, if it had much changed or not. So I went out there 4 o'clock that afternoon in June, exactly almost to the day, 50 years later than I shot the first one. And along the parking lot, there's this huge wall about 150 yards long. The whole 150 yards is lined up with people shooting Ansel Adams' pictures, I just thought it was so funny. Everybody's going to get their own Yosemite Valley shots,
What I love so much about this photo is just the drama of it. I mean, looking at it, it makes me feel so small. It just reminds you of just that huge expansiveness of nature.
Yes, that's probably... Yosemite is probably my favorite place to shoot that sort of thing, Yes, and the Tetons would be my next choice. Here's a shot from the Tetons.
Tell us about this shot.
This is the moon setting over the Tetons at around 5:30 a.m. And the sun is just rising in July of, I think, 2012. In order to get that shot, I wanted to get a shot of the moon, of the full moon setting over the Tetons, okay? So thanks to the internet, I could find the day that there would be a full moon, Then I had to find the month, of course. I wanted it to be in the summer. I'm not going to go out there in January necessarily.
Of course.
So you had to do a lot of preliminary work before you could go out there and shoot it. And so I did all that, went out there, and this is 2012. And if you notice, there's a little haze in the valley and so on.
Yes.
And I wanted just a solid blue sky, solid blue, make it as dark as I could, so that the moon would jump from it. So the perfect day was June 13th or July 13th, I forget which. But anyways, So this was the day before, because being a professional photographer, I know, don't just count on that one day. What if it's cloudy, So I went out a couple of days before, and this was the day before, and there was a lot of haze in the valley from the forest fires.
Oh, okay.
So the next day I went out, you couldn't see the moon because all that smoke had moved in.
Uh-huh.
So there was not even a chance of getting a shot of the moon setting. So anyways, I was happy I shot it when I did.
Yeah, going out that day early ended up.
Yeah. And I've gone out since, and there's so many forest fires, it's hard to get that shot now.
Sure.
I was out there twice since then. There's no chance of shooting even that anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're really, when you're shooting nature, you're at the mercy of nature.
Right.
I would imagine that there is a lot of, as you mentioned, preliminary work and planning.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
People think you just, I'm going to head out there with my camera and click, and that's it.
That doesn't happen too often, that you can be that lucky.
Yeah.
Well, like as I said, talking about that shot there from of the
from
service station,
Texas,
it took me 5 trips.
Yeah, just.
I didn't go out there just to shoot it.
Sure.
But every time I went along 66, I went over there to see what it was like,
Yeah.
And 5 times, finally I got a shot of it. So, you can be lucky,
Yeah. Sometimes
Also,
you're lucky, sometimes it takes
right.
a lot of planning.
That's right.
So, what would you like to shoot next?
Good question.
I'm thinking I'd like to go back and shoot more in the Tetons.
Okay.
Which in the Tetons, the Grand, I think it's called the Teton National Park. It's just south of Yellowstone National Park.
That's Wyoming?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've never done much in Yellowstone. I don't know why, but
You never shot Old Faithful, huh?
well, yeah, a snapshot of
The
it,
geysers.
when it's going off. Yeah, everybody has to do that, of course. But I'd like to get more stuff from the Tetons, except that the Tetons is a range of mountains that the land is, let's say, it's as flat as this table, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly you see a range of mountains just popping out of it. So here you are right here. Here's a range of mountains, and here you are, and it's flat, and there's some water, lakes, and so on, and then there's the mountains. It's just a beautiful sequence. However, once you've done that, it's kind of hard to figure out what else to shoot, I've gone into the mountains, but of course I can't climb anymore at my age and all that, and I've never shot. I spent a day or two in the mountains trying to find stuff to shoot, but I just couldn't find anything worth shooting. It's probably not here for me yet. I just didn't see it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to go back and do a little more on the Tetons.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't shoot much more on 66. I think I've done enough. I've got a couple hundred pictures of it.
Oh, wow.
I probably, one day, I think I'll donate my collection to some 66 society or something, or a set of prints or whatever, because it goes back a long ways,
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Just for people to have access to those little bits of history.
That's right.
I think is important, especially for us younger generations who didn't get to see it when it was in its prime and it was thriving.
Yeah.
Well, this is just a small selection of your fabulous work.
Yes.
So we encourage everyone to go to our website, davidbarnettgallery.com, and see all your fantastic photographs from
Thank you
Route 66 and from Yosemite, and as well as from the Grand Tetons.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
It's
thank
been
you
a pleasure
so
talking
much
to both
for
of you.
being here with us today, Tom.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And of course, always,
Thanks
David.
for viewing, and thanks for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.